Bob Herbert's OpEd.tv is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation with the support of Ann Ulnick. Hi, I'm Bob Herbert. Welcome to OpEd.tv. We have a very special guest for this show. She's the founder and president of the phenomenal Posse Foundation, which has had tremendous success sending teams of big city kids off to elite colleges and universities all over the country. She's also a MacArthur Genius Award winner. And most important, from my perspective, she's my wife, Deborah Beal. Deb, sweetie, I gotta try not to say that during the show. How are you?
I'm good.
Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
Me too.
Let's start with the obvious. What is the Posse program and how did you come to create it?
Well, Posse, I think the easiest way to explain it is to explain the name. Posse was kind of a cool word back in the 1980s, and there was a student in the 1980s who had gone off to college and dropped out. And he said, I never would have dropped out if I had my posse with me. And we thought, well, that's a great idea. Why not send a team of students, a posse, together to college? And that way, if you grew up in the Bronx and ended up in Middlebury, Vermont, you'd be a little less likely to turn around and come home.
Right, it would cushion you against the culture shock, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Great idea. One of the most impressive things about Posse, and I think this was probably the point that initially drew me most strongly to Posse, was its graduation rate. So can you talk about that a little bit?
It's amazing. You know, there are so many really smart kids, really capable, competent, smart, talented kids who can make it at a very selective college and university. And sometimes the reason for attrition is not because they can't cut it there.
Right.
Right? So this simple concept, the cohort model concept, really solves for a lot of those issues. And Posse scholars graduate at rates of over 90% across the board.
Which is incredible because it's a higher rate than the graduation rate for these schools that they're going to. Just, I mean, you're in dozens of schools, but just name a few of the schools that have posses.
Oh, we're at incredible colleges and universities. There's 56 partner colleges, including Brandeis and Middlebury and Bryn Mawr and Hamilton, University of California, Berkeley, University of Wisconsin-Madison. Right. Really, really great schools. Cornell, wonderful schools.
Now, Posse is not a needs-based program. It's not a program designed just for poor kids. It's not an affirmative action program, but it is a very powerful tool for diversity. So even though it's not needs-based or it's not affirmative action, it does lead to a more diverse college campus. Explain how that works.
Right. You know, I think a lot of people see Posse as this incredible college success program, which it is. But that's really only half the story. Posse is about building a new kind of national leadership network for the United States, one really that this country has not seen.
Right.
And one of the reasons we created a program that was about diversity and leadership was because we're not seeing the population reflected in the leadership positions. You know, 90% of the United States Senate is white, and 80% of senators are men, and that's not really representative of who we are. So Posse from the beginning said, there are so many talented students who can succeed at these elite colleges if we gave them the chance. And then if we could make sure that we're picking the young people who have that kind of ambition to go out and lead and be senators and CEOs and college presidents, then we begin to create an opportunity for change in the United States.
So how has Posse been so effective at identifying these youngsters? Because you're not taking the youngsters with the highest standardized test scores or the youngsters from the most elite high schools in the country. So
Right.
how is it that you've been so successful at getting kids who do so well once they get on these campuses?
That's a great question. You know, historically, merit scholarships have gone to the kids with the highest test scores.
Right.
And those kids are still majority Asian and white. But the word merit means deserve. And if you look at the research that Derek Bach and Bill Bowen did, the former presidents of Harvard and Princeton, they reminded us how important it was to make sure that we defined merit as more than a test score. So Posse does that. Posse reaches out to thousands of high schools and community-based organizations every year. This past year, we had over 17,000 nominations for 750 slots.
Right.
And what we do is very non-traditional, right? We do these large group interviews where the kids come in groups of 100, and we have them building robots out of Legos and running discussions on genetic testing. And we're looking for those things that don't show up on a piece of paper, a college application, or are not indicated by a test score. Things like leadership, communication skills, ability to work in a team, the kinds of things that we know make great leaders. When we're looking for that when they're only 17 years old, and that's how we begin to screen for talent that gets missed by these colleges and universities. And that is why we are not a poor kids program or a minority program or at risk or any kind of deficiency
Right.
that might define a program like ours. We are not that. We are a strength-based program.
Even though poor kids or minority children or so-called at-risk kids show up in these posses.
Well, we believe in diversity, right? We're
Exactly.
setting up in New Orleans and Chicago and New York City and Los
Right.
Angeles. We're in these big cities in the country because we want that kind of diversity in our program.
Now, it's impossible to talk about diversity nowadays, sadly, and not mention Donald Trump and the effect that he's had on issues related to race and ethnicity and immigration and that sort of thing. How has the rise of Trump affected what's going on college campuses with regard to these issues?
You know, in the past 2 years since the election, the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education, has reported a 25% increase in the numbers of bias and hate incidents reported by colleges and universities in the United States. And I think we all understand the messages that are coming from the White House are scaring a lot of kids. And I think if you're an immigrant, if you're a person of color, you now are looking over your shoulder a little bit more than you were before. And the racism that has always existed in this country
Right.
now feels, I think people who feel that kind of racism feel more emboldened, more free to come out and express it.
Right.
And that's hard. And young people across the United States on these college and university campuses are speaking out against it, and they're protesting.
Right. I was just going to ask you about that. We've seen a great deal of ferment on the campuses. There are protests, there are demonstrations, complaints are coming from all over. So can you talk about a little bit about that or about what Posse's been seeing?
Yeah, you know, I just gave a speech, a commencement speech at Kalamazoo College, and one of the things I was talking about was how important it is to remember that every single person needs to be treated with dignity. And young people are saying the same thing. And I think in their marches and protests and messages to people in my generation, in our generations, they're saying it's not okay and we won't tolerate it. So many faculty and so many people in the administrations are right there with them. And these college campuses are very, very important places to pay attention to, because it's young people who are going to be leading next.
Right.
And it's those young people who are going to be voting, and those young people who are telling us that we need to not forget that we're supposed to be a meritocracy, or at least strive to be a meritocracy. And we've certainly not shown that lately.
You touched on this, but I want to get into it a little bit more. I want to go back to this issue of over-reliance on test scores. Nobody's saying that you shouldn't test kids or anything like that, but this over-reliance on test scores, on data, and that sort of thing. There are a lot of people who believe that if you just look at the top test scores, you'll be able to very easily identify your brightest and most talented youngsters, and so you want to bring them onto your campus or into your corporation or whatever. And I guess if you just want to lean on easy logic, that would sound sensible. Explain why that kind of reasoning is incorrect.
Right. Wow. There's nothing wrong with a test, right? Tests are important tools for measuring certain things, but they can't be the only tool that we use. And they certainly can't be the tool we use to measure intelligence.
Right.
And they can't be the only tool that we use to measure potential.
Right.
Especially when we rely on one test, the SAT or the ACT, we can't do that. So we need to make sure that we have holistic measures, but also that we're looking at the whole person.
Right.
We have to care about diversity, Bob. We have to say race is important, class is important, and we want our student bodies in our schools in K through 12, in our colleges and universities to reflect the population of the United States. We have to say that, and we have to mean it, and we have to do it.
And the proof, I'm biased in favor of Posse. I don't make any secret of that, but it seems to me that Posse is the proof that this over-reliance on test scores is the wrong way to go, because the Posse scholars have done so incredibly well over a long period of time. That period of time is now measured in decades, and when you can maintain that kind of graduation rate, 90% or higher, over a period of a couple of decades or more, it means that you're doing something right. These are great kids.
They really are tremendous. I don't know if you wanted to, can I tell a story about that? So, since 1989, we've sent over 8,000 kids to college. They've won $1.2 billion in scholarships from our partner colleges and universities. They graduate at rates of over 90%, and they become the leaders that we're talking about in the workforce. I'm going to tell you one quick story. So Shirley Collado, she's a Dominican kid who grew up in Brooklyn. Her dad drove a yellow cab, and she had one of those terrible SAT scores, right? She was in the very, very first posse that went to Vanderbilt University. Thank God for Vanderbilt. They took a chance on a program that had no track record, right? They would never have admitted her. She graduates with honors. She gets her doctorate in clinical psychology from Duke University. She becomes the dean of the college at Middlebury. And this past year, she became the president of Ithaca College. The president of a college. She is the first Dominican American to become president of a four-year college in the United States. She was in Posse, and she helped pave the way for thousands more. Kobe Altman, general manager of the Cleveland Cavaliers, is a Posse alum. We have so many incredible Posse alumni, and it gives me great hope.
And this is exactly what you're talking about when you talk about leadership, when you talk about the president of a college, when you talk about the general manager of a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, it's
so cool.
And there are so many others, obviously. Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2009, and he chose to award Posse a share of the $1.4 million award that came with that Peace Prize. Now this is a heck of I have to watch my language. This is a heck of an honor. What was your reaction when you heard about that, and what was the reason given for having Posse share in the money that came with the Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, it was a surprise to us. President Obama selected 10 nonprofits that he would share his Nobel Peace Prize money with, and we were one of them. And I remember I was in Los Angeles at the time, and the White House had been trying to reach me, and I got a call from someone on our staff, and she said, "Are you sitting down?" I was so excited, and I cried because it was an honor to be selected by a president that we so admire.
And of course, it was a measure of the respect that President Obama and the administration had for the Posse program. They were, not just aware of the Posse program from reading about it in the paper. I mean, they knew about Posse.
Yeah.
And,
it was great.
It
felt like we won a little bit of the Nobel Prize, Peace Prize.
So I remember another big surprise that you got. Again, this came without warning. You won a MacArthur Genius Award. Explain how that came about and how you found out about it and what your reaction to it was.
Well, it's an honor beyond any I could have imagined, and I feel emotional just saying that right now. But again, you win that without knowing that you're in the running.
Right,
And
you can't campaign for it.
No.
You can't nominate yourself or have someone
can't.
nominate you. You know nothing about it.
No. And when I got that phone call, I think I felt a little bit the way I imagine a Posse candidate must feel when she wins a Posse scholarship.
Right.
Because it's a life-changing moment. It's the kind of acknowledgement that you don't necessarily expect. And for me, that particular acknowledgement meant a lot for Posse.
I remember when we went to tell your parents
Yeah.
that you'd won the MacArthur. We were in their living room, and they're sitting across from us on two chairs.
I remember.
And they just, as soon as you said it, they just burst out.
They
both of them
cried.
burst out crying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Now you've developed some specialized Posse. So Posse kids can go off to these colleges and they matriculate like any other college student, and there's a whole variety of majors. But you've got some specialized posses, and one of them is a STEM posse. We'll talk about another one in a moment, but tell us what the STEM posses are.
STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. We have 11 partner institutions, University of Michigan, Davidson, Brandeis, Middlebury. Great schools are in that program. And they take a posse of 10, all posses have 10 students in them. They take a posse of 10 STEM students every year. So these are young people who are focused specifically on going into a career in science or math or technology and engineering. So it's very exciting to have that. That was another initiative that we had going, and then we doubled the size of it when the Obama administration sent a challenge out to organizations like ours and universities saying,
Right.
Can you do more? And that was what we did. It's very exciting. We have funders of that, Leslie and Mark Silcox, and also Jeff Ubben, who basically gave millions of dollars in support of that initiative.
Right. And of course, these STEM scholars are, I think, especially important because kids from black and brown backgrounds are just grossly underrepresented
Right.
In those areas when you get on the college campuses and then
Yeah.
beyond in
Yeah.
the professional life. So for ethnic minorities, the STEM posses are, just fabulously important. It also paves the way. Other kids see these kids succeed, and they
Right.
know that these avenues are open
makes
to
a
them
huge
and that
difference.
they are
Yeah.
capable of doing it
Exactly.
themselves. Now, another specialized program at Posse is your Veterans Initiative. Now, that is a real departure from the traditional Posse scholar. Talk about that.
I think it might seem like a real departure, but in fact, it fits very much into our mission to build a diverse network of leaders. Vets are severely underrepresented at these selective colleges and universities. These are post 9/11 United States veterans, many of whom come back and don't have a college degree.
Right.
And, you know, Vassar College, Cappy Bond Hill, who was the president at the time, called me up and said, Debbie, would you ever think about applying the posse model, the cohort model, to these post 9/11 US veterans? And I thought, oh, what an amazing idea, right? Our board signed on in 2 seconds. We raised more than $2 million in a couple of weeks for this. The idea is, so let's use Vassar, right? Vassar had one veteran on its campus, one. After Posse, within 5 years, they had 40 veterans
Wow.
on their campus. If you're a post 9/11 US vet, your average age is 27, 28 years old.
Right.
Think about going to college away with a bunch of 19-year-olds.
Think about going to Vassar. I mean, when I think about veterans, because I was in the service myself, when I think about veterans, I don't imagine them going off in a pack to Vassar College. But anyway, go ahead.
So you think about that, and you can understand why they might not be going, right? They're also getting tons of advertising from these for-profit institutions, and so that lures them away from this idea that they could be going to an elite college, you know, to get their education. So we're saying, let's make it more palatable. Let's send you with a posse, with a team. Now when there's 40 veterans on a campus, there's a built-in community for you there. And they help diversify that student body. A man or a woman who's been deployed to Afghanistan or Iraq and is sitting in a classroom, and whatever that classroom is focused on, whether it's history or, you know, whatever it is, psychology, they're bringing an insight and a life experience to that discussion that is incredibly valuable. University of Chicago just signed on. They're our newest veterans posse, which is really exciting, and we expect to expand that program to, you know, 5 or 6 more schools in the next couple of years.
That is really fantastic. We've only got about a minute and a half left. Let's talk about a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? How did you get into this racket?
This racket. I grew up in Teaneck, New Jersey. I was born in Manhattan.
Jersey girl. I grew up in Montclair, but we didn't know each other.
No, we didn't. And my dad played for the New York Philharmonic for 38 years. He
Contrabassoonist.
Contrabassoon and bassoon, and he was their official photographer. My mom did PR for the New York State Psychiatric Institute. And I lived in a home that was all about discussion and thinking about social justice and talking about politics and what was important in the world. My parents are hugely influential to me. And then I went to Brandeis, and then I started Posse, basically.
Well, you
shortly
also
thereafter.
you got advanced degrees at Harvard.
Yep, I got my doctorate at the Harvard Graduate School of Education.
And why do I remember that? Because when I met you, I'm thinking the first thing I found out about you is that you were going off to Cambridge to get your doctorate. I'm going, oh my goodness, and she's right here in New York, and now she's going to Cambridge, and there I was.
Well, you're
up and
forgetting
down I-95.
One of the best things that I ever did in my life was marry you.
There you go. Same here. All right, I'll call you sweetie. It's my wife, Deborah Beal. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
We'll be back in a moment with a final word. Survivors of the Holocaust and others concerned about the moral imperative of that immense tragedy and about its relationship to our efforts to build and maintain a flourishing civilization have always stressed the importance of the phrase, never forget. But sadly, it appears that many of us are indeed forgetting. A survey of American adults has shown that an increasing number lack even the most basic knowledge of the slaughter of the Jews in those terrible years leading up to and including World War II. And as the New York Times reported, that lack of basic knowledge is most pronounced among millennials, young people aged 18 to 34. 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust, but the survey found that 31% of Americans and 41% of millennials believe the number to be 2 million or fewer. More than 40% of Americans and 66% of millennials were unable to say what Auschwitz was. That name often drew the equivalent of a blank stare. This is ignorance on a tragic scale. There are approximately 400,000 Holocaust survivors worldwide, but most are in their 80s and 90s. As the Times said, Holocaust remembrance advocates and educators who agree that no book, film, or traditional exhibition can compare to the voice of a survivor dread the day when none are left to tell the stories. That day, of course, is inevitable, but we don't have to allow the memory of the Holocaust, our knowledge of the Holocaust, and our understanding of the profound importance of the Holocaust to fade from our collective consciousness. We can reverse this decline in our knowledge of the basic facts, and we can increase our deeper understanding of what happened and how and why. For those who care about civilization here and elsewhere, that effort should be embraced as a solemn obligation. That's all for now. See you next time.